Mia Morgan heard the applause before she fully opened her eyes, the sound sharp and overwhelming, echoing through a moment that felt both distant and painfully familiar. Her vision cleared slowly, and the first thing she saw was a ring held out in front of her, its diamond catching the light as if nothing in the world could possibly be wrong. Then she saw him, Robert Cole, kneeling, smiling, confident, certain of her answer. For a split second, her mind went blank. Then everything rushed back. The cold hospital room, the suffocating silence, the betrayal she didn't see coming until it was too late. 3 years of giving everything she had to a man who only saw her as a tool. The moment she realized she had lost everything, her company slipping away, her trust shattered, and the one person who had always been there gone. And then, the final darkness. Her fingers trembled, slightly. This isn't real. But it was. The same proposal. The same crowd. The same trap she had walked into once before. "Mia," Robert said softly, his voice practiced, warm in a way that used to fool her. "I will spend my life loving you. Marry me." Around them, people leaned forward in anticipation. Some were smiling, some already whispering, waiting for her to say yes, just like she had in the past. Mia could feel their expectations pressing in on her, but this time, it felt different. This time, she could see everything clearly. She didn't look at Robert again. Instead, her eyes moved past him, through the crowd, and found someone standing slightly apart from the scene. Andy Yun. He wasn't clapping. He wasn't smiling. He never did, not at moments like this. Tall, composed, dressed in a dark suit that made him look untouchable, he stood there with that same calm, distant expression. But Mia knew better. She had seen what that silence cost him. She had seen it too late. In her last life, this was the night he walked out of her world. And she had let him go. Her chest tightened as memories overlapped with reality, and for a brief moment she couldn't breathe. She remembered chasing after the wrong man while the right one turned his back and disappeared without ever asking her to stay. Not this time. Robert shifted slightly, noticing her hesitation. "Mia," he prompted, still smiling, though there was a flicker of impatience in his eyes now. "Everyone's waiting." Yes, everyone was waiting, but not for the same answer. Mia took a slow breath, steadying herself. Her heart was still racing, but her mind had never been clearer. She lowered her gaze to the ring for just a second, then lifted her head again, her expression calm, almost detached. "I'm not marrying you." The words were simple, but they cut through the room like glass shattering. For a moment, no one reacted. It was as if the entire space had frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Robert's smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second, before he forced it back into place. "What?" he asked, letting out a small, disbelieving laugh as if she had made a joke that didn't quite land. "Mia, this isn't funny." "I'm not joking," she said, her voice steady now. "I'm not marrying you." The silence that followed was heavier this time, filled with confusion, whispers beginning to ripple through the crowd. Robert slowly stood up, his hand still holding the ring, his expression tightening in a way that most people wouldn't notice, but Mia did. She had spent too long studying his expressions, mistaking them for sincerity. "You don't mean that," he said quietly, stepping closer to her. "You're just nervous. We can talk about this later." "No," Mia replied, taking a step back instead of forward. "There's nothing to talk about." For the first time, something cold flashed across Robert's eyes before it disappeared just as quickly. He lowered his voice, enough that only she could hear. "Mia, don't do this here." That tone, that warning. In the past, it would have made her hesitate. It would have made her doubt herself, worry about embarrassing him, worry about what people would think. But now, all it did was confirm what she already knew. She turned away from him. The movement was small, but it was final. And then she started walking. At first, no one stopped her because no one expected her to leave. But as she moved through the crowd, the whispers grew louder, confusion turning into shock as people realized this wasn't part of the plan. "Mia!" Robert called after her, his voice sharper now, losing its carefully crafted warmth. "Where are you going?" She didn't answer, because she already knew exactly where she needed to go. Her steps quickened, Her heart beat loud in her ears as she pushed past the last few people standing in her way, her eyes locked on one person and one person only. Andy Yun. He hadn't moved. Not when she rejected the proposal. Not when the room fell into chaos. He just stood there, watching, his gaze steady, unreadable. If anyone else had been in his position, they would have stepped forward, said something, reacted in some way. But Andy wasn't like anyone else. He waited. And for the first time, Mia didn't make him wait alone. She stopped right in front of him, slightly out of breath, her hands trembling at her sides, even though she tried to keep them still. Up close, she could see the faint crease between his brows, the subtle shift in his eyes as he looked at her, trying to understand what had just happened. "Mia," he said finally, his voice low, controlled, but edged with something she hadn't heard in a long time. "What are you doing?" For a second, she couldn't answer. Not because she didn't know, but because the weight of everything she had lost, everything she had done wrong, was crashing down on her all at once. In her last life, this was where she turned away from him. This was where she chose wrong. Her fingers tightened slightly before she lifted her hand, hesitated for just a fraction of a second, and then grabbed his sleeve. The contact was small, but it was enough to make his expression change. "I'm fixing a mistake," she said, her voice quieter now but firm. Andy looked down at her hand on his sleeve, then back at her face, his eyes narrowing slightly as if he was searching for something, anything that would tell him this was real. "Let go," he said after a moment, not harsh but distant. "Don't do this unless you mean it." That distance hurt more than she expected, because she knew exactly where it came from. "I do mean it," Mia replied immediately, tightening her grip instead of releasing him. "Andy, Behind them, footsteps approached quickly. "Mia!" Robert's voice was no longer warm. It was sharp, controlled, carrying an edge that made people instinctively step back. "We're not done." Mia didn't turn around. Not this time. Her focus stayed on Andy, her eyes steady despite everything happening around them. "I'm not going back," she said, not loudly, but clearly enough for both men to hear. Andy's gaze flickered slightly, something shifting beneath the surface, but he didn't move yet. And Robert, standing just a few steps behind them, finally stopped smiling altogether. The game had changed. And this time, Mia wasn't the same player anymore. The only question left was whether Andy would believe her before it was too late again. Andy didn't pull his sleeve away immediately, but he didn't move closer either. His eyes stayed on Mia's hand, gripping his suit like she was afraid he might disappear if she let go. Behind them, the room was still buzzing from the broken proposal, voices rising, people whispering, some recording, but Andy didn't turn to look. He only looked at her, calm on the surface, but distant in a way that made her chest tighten. "Let go," he repeated, this time a little firmer, though his tone never rose. "Mia, don't do something you'll regret in 10 minutes. "I won't," she said quickly, almost cutting him off. Her fingers tightened instead of loosening. "I'm not changing my mind again." That word, again, hung in the air between them. Andy's gaze sharpened just slightly. He didn't ask what she meant, but she could tell he heard it, processed it, and filed it away without showing it. Footsteps stopped right behind her. "Mia!" Robert's voice had dropped all warmth now. He wasn't shouting, but the pressure in his tone made people nearby instinctively step back. "Come here!" Mia didn't move. Robert let out a quiet breath, as if trying to stay patient. "We'll talk privately. You're upset, I get it. But this isn't how you handle things." Still nothing from her. Andy's eyes flicked past her shoulder for a brief moment, acknowledging Robert's presence without turning fully toward him. Then he looked back at Mia. "You should handle your own situation," he said calmly. "Don't drag me into it." The words hit harder than she expected. In her last life, he had said something similar, right before he walked away for good. Back then, she didn't even try to stop him. Not this time. "I'm not dragging you into anything," Mia said, forcing her voice to stay steady. "I'm choosing." "Choosing what?" Andy asked, his expression unreadable. "And who?" She looked straight at him. "You." That answer made Robert move. He stepped forward and grabbed Mia's wrist, not violently, but firmly enough to pull her half a step back. "That's enough," he said under his breath. "You're embarrassing yourself." Mia's body went rigid for a second, Not from fear, but from something colder. The memory of another time. Another grip just like this flashed through her mind. Back then, she had followed without questioning. Now she pulled her hand back. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice low but sharp enough to cut. Robert's eyes darkened. "Mia, stop this. You're not thinking clearly." "I've never been clearer," she replied. Then, she turned slightly, enough to face both men, making it impossible for Robert to pull her away without causing a scene. "We're done." "I already said that." Robert's jaw tightened. "You don't get to decide that alone." "We're not married," she said, not raising her voice, but making sure every word landed. "I don't need your permission." A murmur ran through the nearby crowd. Some people shifted, pretending not to listen, but clearly listening to everything. Robert glanced around briefly, then leaned closer to her again, lowering his voice. "You'll regret this." Mia met his eyes without flinching. "I already did. I'm just fixing it." For a second, something unreadable flickered across Robert's face, something darker than annoyance, but it disappeared quickly as he straightened. He looked past her, directly at Andy now, his expression smoothing out into something more controlled. "You're enjoying this?" Robert asked, his tone almost polite again. "Watching her make a scene." Andy finally turned his head fully toward him. His posture remained relaxed, hands in his pockets, but there was a subtle shift in the air around him, something colder. "I'm not involved," Andy said simply. Mia felt that sentence like a quiet rejection, but she didn't let go. Robert gave a small, humorless smile. "Then maybe you should step away. This is between me and her." Andy didn't answer immediately. His gaze moved back to Mia again, slower this time, as if weighing something. She could almost see the calculation behind his eyes, the hesitation he wouldn't admit. Then he spoke, still calm. "You heard him." Mia's grip tightened again. "No." One word. Firm. Andy's brows drew together slightly. "Mia, I'm not going with him," she said, cutting in before he could finish. "And I'm not letting you walk away again either." That made him pause. Just a fraction, but enough. Behind them, someone cleared their throat awkwardly, and another voice whispered something about security. The tension in the room had shifted from curiosity to discomfort. Robert's patience was thinning. "You're making this worse," he said. "For yourself." Mia didn't look at him. "Then leave." Silence. Then a short, disbelieving laugh escaped him. "You think this ends because you say so?" She didn't respond. And he finally moved. Not toward her, but slightly to the side, just enough to stand between Mia and Robert without making it obvious. It wasn't a dramatic gesture, and most people wouldn't notice it, but Mia did. "Mr. Cole," Andy said evenly, using his last name in a way that created instant distance. "This isn't the place." Robert's eyes narrowed. "I didn't ask for your opinion." "And you're not getting one," Andy replied. "Just a suggestion." The two men held each other's gaze for a moment, silent, measuring. Robert wasn't weak, not by any means. He was used to getting what he wanted, used to people stepping back when he pushed. But Andy wasn't someone who stepped back. That much was obvious. Robert exhaled slowly, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Fine," he said. "We'll continue this later." His gaze shifted to Mia again, lingering for a second longer than necessary. "You'll come find me," he added quietly. "You always do." Then he turned and walked away. The tension didn't disappear immediately. It lingered in the room, in the whispers, in the way people pretended to return to normal while still watching from the corners of their eyes. Mia didn't care about any of that. She was still holding on to Andy's sleeve, and now that Robert was gone, the silence between them felt even heavier. Andy looked down at her hand again, then back at her face. "You can let go now." She didn't. "If I let go," she said, her voice softer now but no less firm, "you'll leave." "I might," he answered honestly. That honesty hurt more than anything Robert had said. Mia swallowed, forcing herself not to look away. "Then don't." Andy's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes did, something that flickered and vanished too quickly to name. "You don't get to decide that," he said. "Then give me a reason not to hold on," she replied. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Andy gently, but firmly, removed her hand from his sleeve. Not rough, Not cold, just deliberate. He stepped back half a step, creating space between them again. You're confused, he said. And you're reacting. That's all this is. Mia shook her head immediately. No. I know exactly what I'm doing. Do you? Andy asked. Because 5 minutes ago, you were about to say yes to him. I wasn't, she said. You were, he replied, not raising his voice, but not backing down either. You've chosen him before. More than once. That landed. Because it was true. Mia took a breath, steadying herself. And I was wrong. I know that now. Andy watched her carefully, searching for hesitation, for doubt, for any sign that this would pass like everything else. He didn't find it, and that was exactly what made him uneasy. You'll go back to him, he said after a moment, quieter now. You always do. Mia stepped forward this time, closing the distance he had just created. Not this time. He didn't move away, but he didn't move closer either. The distance between them remained, unresolved. And for the first time, Mia realized that fixing her mistake wasn't just about choosing him. It was about convincing him that she wouldn't leave again. The next morning didn't feel like a new start. It felt like the aftermath of something that had already gone too far to take back. Mia Morgan sat in the back seat of her car, phone in hand, scrolling through headlines that had exploded overnight. The broken proposal was everywhere. Some called it dramatic, others called it humiliating, but the ones that caught her attention were the ones twisting the story, painting Robert Cole as the victim, and her as unstable, impulsive, ungrateful. She didn't need to guess who was behind that. Robert never liked losing control of a narrative. Miss Morgan, the driver said from the front, glancing at her through the rearview mirror. We've arrived. Mia didn't respond immediately. She locked her phone, took a breath, and stepped out. The building in front of her was Robert's company headquarters, a place she used to visit often, a place she once believed would become part of her future. Now it just felt like another mistake she needed to clean up properly. Inside, the reception staff recognized her instantly. Their polite smiles came with curiosity they couldn't hide. One of them quickly called upstairs, and within seconds, she was escorted to a private elevator. No one asked why she was here. Everyone assumed they already knew. When the elevator doors opened, Robert was already waiting. He stood near the glass wall of his office, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, as if he had been working, but Mia could tell from the untouched documents on his desk that he had been expecting her instead. His assistant, a quiet man who handled most of Robert's scheduling and business coordination, stood near the door and stepped aside the moment Mia walked in, closing it behind her without a word. So you came, Robert said, turning slowly, his tone calm, almost pleased. I told you that you would. Mia didn't move further into the room. She stayed near the entrance, keeping distance between them. I came to end things properly. Robert smiled faintly, walking toward her at an unhurried pace. You already made quite a scene yesterday. Isn't that enough? No, she replied. That wasn't the end. This is. He stopped a few steps away from her, studying her face as if trying to find the version of her he was used to. You didn't sleep, did you? He asked, his voice softening again. You're letting emotions get the better of you. Sit down. We'll talk. I'm not here to talk, Mia said. I'm here to make it clear. We're done. Completely. Robert let out a quiet breath, running a hand through his hair like he was trying to stay patient. Mia, you don't throw away everything we've built over one impulsive decision. We didn't build anything, she said. I did. You used it. That made his expression shift, just slightly. That's not fair. It's accurate. He took another step closer. You're upset because of what happened yesterday, because of the pressure, because of him. He didn't say Andy's name, but it was obvious who he meant. You're confusing attachment with something else. Mia shook her head. No. I'm finally seeing things clearly. Robert's voice dropped lower. Then explain it to me. Explain why you suddenly changed overnight. She didn't hesitate. Because I finally understand who you are. Silence stretched between them for a moment. Robert's smile returned, but it was thinner now. And who am I, according to you? A man who only stays when it benefits him, Mia said. A man who lies when it's convenient, and walks away when things get difficult. His eyes darkened. That's not who I am. It is, she replied. I just didn't want to admit it before. Robert's patience snapped just a little. And what about you? He asked. You think you're any different? You stood on that stage yesterday, you let me propose. You let everyone believe we were getting married, and then you walked away. That's not clarity, Mia. That's cruelty. She held his gaze. No, that's honesty. Something I should have given you a long time ago. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then Robert stepped even closer, close enough that his voice didn't need to carry. You'll regret this, he said quietly. Not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But when things settle down, when reality hits, you'll come back. You always do. Mia didn't move back this time. No, I won't. You say that now, he continued, his tone almost gentle again, but there was something sharper underneath. But you don't know what you're walking away from. I do, she said. I'm walking away from you. Robert stared at her for a long moment, then suddenly laughed, low and humorless. This is about him, isn't it? It's about me, she corrected. You think he'll choose you? Robert asked. You think you're the exception? Mia didn't answer. Because this wasn't about what Andy would do. This was about what she wouldn't do anymore. Robert exhaled slowly, stepping back at last. Fine, he said. If you want to play this game, we can play it. Mia frowned slightly. This isn't a game. It is now, he replied. He walked back toward his desk, picking up his phone, and tapping the screen a few times before setting it down again. Give it a few hours, he said casually. You'll start seeing things from a different perspective. Mia didn't like the sound of that. What did you do? Robert didn't answer directly. You wanted to end things publicly, right? Then let's make it public. Her phone buzzed in her hand. She looked down. A new wave of headlines had already started appearing. Corporate heiress Mia Morgan mentally unstable after public breakdown. Sources claim relationship with Robert Cole was strained due to third party. Mysterious man identified. Andy Yun linked to Mia Morgan's scandal. Mia's grip on her phone tightened. Robert watched her reaction closely. See, he said. Reality. You're spreading this, she said. I'm correcting the narrative, he replied. People need context. This isn't context. It's lies. It's perception, he said. And perception is what matters. Mia lifted her head slowly, her expression no longer shaken but cold. You think this will make me come back? I think it will remind you what happens when you make the wrong choice, Robert answered. She stared at him for a moment longer, then locked her phone and slipped it into her bag. Then you really don't understand me at all. Robert's smile faded slightly. We'll see. Mia turned and walked toward the door. Just as her hand touched the handle, Robert spoke again, his voice quieter this time, but more dangerous. You won't be able to ignore this forever, Mia. She paused, but didn't turn back. I'm not ignoring it, she said. I'm ending it. Then she opened the door and walked out. Outside, the assistant standing by the hallway glanced at her briefly, then looked away, pretending not to notice anything. The elevator ride down felt longer than before, but Mia didn't check her phone again. She already knew what was happening. Robert wasn't chasing her anymore. He was trying to corner her. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped out into the lobby, and the moment she did, cameras flashed. Reporters had already gathered, voices calling her name, questions thrown at her from every direction. Miss Morgan, is it true you're involved with Andy Yun? Did you reject Mr. Cole because of another relationship? Are you mentally stable after yesterday's incident? Mia stopped, just for a second. Then she lifted her head and walked straight through them. No hesitation, no answers. Because for the first time, she understood something clearly. Robert wasn't the past she needed to escape. He was the problem she needed to face. And this time, she wasn't running back. By the time Mia reached Andy's company, the headlines had already escalated. Her phone kept vibrating in her hand, messages from Lena, her closest friend who had witnessed everything from the proposal to the breakup, flooding in nonstop, asking if she was okay, warning her not to face Robert alone again, telling her the situation was getting worse online. Mia didn't reply. She stepped out of the car and walked straight into the building without slowing down. Andy's headquarters operated with quiet efficiency. People recognized her immediately, but unlike Robert's office, no one stared too long, no one whispered. They simply stepped aside and let her pass. His assistant, a composed man responsible for managing Andy's schedule and handling high-level coordination, was already waiting by the elevator. "Miss Morgan," he said, giving a slight nod. "Mr. Yun is in a meeting." "I'll wait," Mia replied. The assistant hesitated for a brief second, then pressed the button and led her upstairs. "He won't like being interrupted," he said, not as a warning but as a fact. "He doesn't have to like it," Mia answered. When the elevator doors opened, the assistant guided her down the hallway and stopped in front of a glass-walled conference room. Inside, Andy sat at the head of the table, surrounded by executives and shareholders. His posture was relaxed, but every word he said carried weight. He wasn't raising his voice, but no one spoke over him. Mia didn't need to hear the details to understand. This was his world, and he controlled it completely. The assistant gave her a brief look. "Wait here." Mia shook her head and pushed the door open. The conversation inside stopped instantly. All eyes turned toward her, but Mia didn't look at anyone else. She walked straight toward Andy, ignoring the tension that filled the room. Andy looked up at her, his expression unreadable. "This is a closed meeting," he said calmly. "I know," Mia replied. "I need 5 minutes." The executives exchanged glances. One of them, an older shareholder, frowned slightly, clearly annoyed by the interruption. Andy didn't react immediately. He studied her face for a second, then leaned back in his chair. "Continue without me," he said, standing up. No one questioned it. He walked out of the room, and Mia followed. The door closed behind them, cutting off the conversation completely. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Andy turned to face her fully. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," Mia said. "But I didn't have time to wait." His gaze shifted slightly, taking in her expression, the tension in her shoulders, the way she was holding herself together. "Robert," he said, not as a question. "Yes." "What did he do?" "He stopped pretending," Mia replied. She pulled out her phone and handed it to him. "Look!" And he glanced at the screen. Headlines, articles, speculation, all of it pointing in the same direction. He didn't scroll for long. He didn't need to. "He's escalating," Andy said, handing the phone back. "He's trying to force me back," Mia replied. Andy's expression didn't change. "And you came to me because—" Mia met his eyes. "Because I'm not handling this alone." Silence. Andy looked at her for a long second, then turned slightly, walking a few steps down the hallway before stopping. Mia followed without hesitation. "You're asking for help," he said. "I'm making a choice," she corrected. "That's not the same thing." "It is to me." And he exhaled quietly. "You rejected him publicly. He won't stop until he regains control. That's how he works." "I know. And you still walked into his office alone this morning. I needed to end it." "You think it's over?" Andy asked, turning back to her. Mia shook her head. "No. I think it's just starting." That answer lingered between them. Andy watched her carefully, then spoke again, slower this time. "What exactly do you want from me, Mia?" She didn't hesitate. "Stand with me." He held her gaze. "Why?" "Because I chose you," she said. "And I'm not taking that back." Andy's jaw tightened slightly. "This isn't something you say once and expect everything to change." "I'm not expecting anything," Mia replied. "I'm proving it." "How?" She stepped closer. "By not walking away." Andy let out a quiet breath, looking away for a moment as if weighing something. When he looked back at her, his expression had shifted, still controlled, but sharper now. "There's only one way to shut him down quickly," he said. Mia waited. "Make it public," Andy continued. "Not denial. Not silence. Replace his narrative with something stronger." Mia understood immediately. "You mean, give them a story they can't twist," Andy said. "Something clear. Something undeniable." "And what would that be?" Andy didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped closer, closing the distance between them in one smooth movement. Mia felt it before she fully processed it. The shift in space, the change in pressure, the way his presence suddenly felt too close to ignore. "If we're doing this," he said quietly, his voice lower now, "we don't hesitate." Mia's heartbeat picked up, but she didn't step back. "You're talking about fake dating." "I'm talking about control," Andy replied. "You stand next to me, and he loses his leverage." And Lily? Mia asked, referring to the woman chosen by Andy's family as his political match, someone who represented business alliances more than personal choice. She'll handle herself, Andy said. That's not your concern. Mia studied his face. And you? Andy met her gaze directly. I don't do this halfway. That wasn't reassurance. That was a warning. Mia took a breath, steadying herself. Then don't. A brief silence followed. Then Andy reached out. His hand closed around her wrist, firm but controlled, pulling her slightly closer until there was barely any space left between them. Anyone walking past would see it clearly. This wasn't distance. This wasn't indifference. If you're going to act, he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear, act properly. Mia looked up at him, her expression steady despite the tension running through her. Maybe I'm not acting. Andy's grip tightened just slightly. For the first time, something in his composure shifted, and neither of them stepped back. The shift happened fast after that decision. Within hours, the narrative online began to change. Photos appeared. Mia walking beside Andy, Andy's hand resting lightly at her waist, the two of them leaving his building together without denying anything. There was no statement, no explanation, just visibility. It was enough. People stopped asking if there was a third party. They started asking when it began. Robert's version of the story didn't disappear, but it lost control. For the first time since the proposal, Mia felt like she wasn't being cornered. That didn't mean Robert was done. 2 days later, Mia received a message from an unknown number. It was short and direct. Come talk. One last time. You owe me that. She stared at the screen for a moment. She didn't need to ask who it was. The wording, the tone, the confidence. It was Robert. She could have ignored it. She should have. Instead, she replied with a location. She didn't tell Andy. That decision followed her all the way to the private lounge Robert had reserved. It wasn't a public restaurant, not exactly. It was a controlled space, quiet, designed for private meetings where nothing leaked unless someone wanted it to. Robert was already there when she arrived, sitting at a table near the window, 2 glasses placed neatly in front of him. He looked up as she walked in, his expression calm, almost pleased. I was starting to think you wouldn't come. I said I would, Mia replied, taking the seat across from him but not touching anything on the table. Robert leaned back slightly, studying her. You look different. I am. He smiled faintly. We'll see. A staff member approached briefly, placing a bottle of wine on the table before leaving. Robert poured into both glasses with practiced ease, then slid one toward her. Relax, he said. It's just a conversation. Mia didn't pick up the glass. Say what you need to say. Robert didn't push. He lifted his own glass instead, taking a slow sip before setting it down. You moved quickly, he said. Aligning yourself with Andy like that. I underestimated you. This isn't alignment, Mia replied. It's choice. Robert nodded as if he was considering that. And you think he'll protect you? I'm not asking him to. That's the problem, Robert said. You don't understand the position you're in. Mia didn't respond. Robert leaned forward slightly. You think this is about feelings. It's not. It's about leverage, influence, and timing. You stepping away from me doesn't remove you from the game. It makes you more exposed. I'm not playing your game, Mia said. You already are, he replied. Mia reached into her bag and placed something on the table. The necklace he had given her years ago, something she used to treasure like proof of his affection. Take it back, she said. Robert glanced at it, then back at her. You kept that for a long time. I kept a lot of things I shouldn't have. And now you're letting go of all of it, he asked. Yes. Robert's fingers tapped lightly against the table. You're making a clean break. I respect that. Mia didn't trust the calm in his voice. Then let's make it official, he continued, pushing his glass slightly toward her again. A final drink. No expectations. No past. After this, we go our separate ways. Mia looked at the glass. For a brief second, something in her chest tightened. Not from hesitation, but from memory. There had been a moment in her previous life that felt exactly like this. A calm ending that wasn't an ending at all. She lifted the glass. Robert watched her closely, but his expression didn't change. You first, she said. A small pause. Then Robert smiled and reached for the other glass, picking it up without hesitation. "Still cautious," he said lightly and took a sip. Mia didn't relax. She raised her own glass slowly, watching him the entire time, then took a small drink. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Robert leaned back, satisfied. "See? Not everything has to be complicated." Mia set the glass down. Something felt off. It started subtly, a warmth spreading too quickly, not like alcohol, not like anything normal. Her fingers tensed slightly against the edge of the table. Her breathing shifted. Robert saw it, and this time he didn't hide it. "You always were smart," he said quietly, "but not careful enough." Mia's vision blurred for a second, then steadied just enough for her to focus on him. "What did you do?" Robert didn't answer directly. He stood up slowly, walking around the table until he was standing beside her. "You think you can just walk away from me?" he said, his voice low now, stripped of all pretense. "After everything?" Mia tried to stand, but her body didn't respond the way she expected. Her balance faltered, and she had to grip the table to steady herself. "You drank my glass," she said, forcing the words out. Robert tilted his head slightly. "Did I?" The room felt smaller. Her heartbeat was too loud, her thoughts slipping, her control fading in a way she recognized and feared. "Mia," Robert said, crouching slightly so his voice was right next to her ear. "You should have just come back." She pushed against him weakly. "Don't touch me." He caught her wrist easily. "You don't get to decide that anymore." The door opened. The sound was sharp, cutting through everything. Robert didn't turn immediately. Mia did. Through the haze, through the blur, she saw him. Andy. He didn't rush in. He walked, steady, controlled, but every step carried something dangerous underneath. His eyes moved from Mia to Robert, taking in everything in a single glance. Robert straightened slowly. "You're earlier than expected." Andy didn't respond. He stopped a few steps away, his gaze locking onto Mia. "Can you stand?" Mia tried. Failed. Andy crossed the distance, instantly. He didn't ask again. He pulled her into him, one arm around her shoulders, steadying her, holding her weight like it was nothing. The moment she touched him, the tension in her body broke, just slightly. "Andy," her voice came out barely above a whisper. I know," he said. That was all. Then he looked at Robert. The air shifted. "What did you give her?" Andy asked. Robert shrugged slightly. "Nothing she didn't agree to." Andy moved before the sentence finished. His hand grabbed Robert by the collar, slamming him back against the table hard enough to knock the glasses over. The sound echoed through the room, sharp and violent. "Say it again," Andy said, his voice low, controlled, but carrying something that made even Robert pause. Robert tried to push him off, but Andy didn't move. "You're overreacting." The pressure tightened. "Touch her again," Andy said quietly, "and I'll end you." There was no hesitation in his voice. No exaggeration. Just fact. For the first time, Robert didn't smile. And Mia, barely conscious in Annie's arms, understood one thing clearly. This was never fake to him. Mia woke to a steady rhythm, the sound of her own breathing, slow and controlled, and something else beneath it, a quiet presence that didn't move. Her head felt heavy, her body slow to respond, but the panic she expected didn't come. Instead, there was a strange sense of calm, like her body recognized where she was before her mind caught up. She turned slightly. Andy was there, sitting beside the bed, one arm resting against the edge, his posture straight but still, like he hadn't moved in a long time. His jacket was gone, his sleeves rolled up, and there was a faint tension in his jaw that hadn't been there before. The moment he noticed her eyes open, that tension shifted, not disappearing, but tightening into focus. "You're awake," he said. Mia tried to sit up, but he was already moving. His hand pressed lightly against her shoulder, steadying her without force. "Don't," he said. "You're still coming out of it." She swallowed, her throat dry. "How long?" "A few hours." Her memory came back in fragments. The drink, the heat, Robert's voice. Then Andy. Her fingers tightened slightly against the blanket. "You found me." "I was already on my way," Andy replied. "You shouldn't have gone alone." "I needed to end it." "You don't end people like him by talking," he said. You end them by removing what they want. Mia looked at him. Control. Andy didn't answer, but the silence confirmed it. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Mia pushed herself up anyway, slower this time, ignoring the lingering weakness. Andy didn't stop her again, but his hand stayed close, ready. Did he get away? She asked. Yes. Her jaw tightened. Then it's not over. It was never going to be, Andy said. Mia leaned back slightly, forcing her thoughts into place. He's not doing this alone. Andy's eyes shifted just slightly. Explain. He's too confident, Mia said. Too prepared. The media, the timing, the way everything escalated. It's not just him reacting. It's planned. Andy watched her carefully. Go on. Mia hesitated for a fraction of a second. Then she said it. Your family. That made him still. Someone on your side benefits from this, she continued. Someone who wants you distracted, weakened, or forced into a position. Andy didn't respond immediately. Mia held his gaze. Who is it? A long pause. Then Andy stood up slowly, walking a few steps away before stopping. His back was to her now, his hands resting lightly against the edge of the table nearby. When he spoke again, his voice was calm, but there was something heavier beneath it. Oliver Yun, he said. Mia repeated the name quietly. Your uncle? Yes. What does he want? Andy turned slightly, enough for her to see his expression. Everything. Mia let that settle. And Robert? A tool, Andy replied. Or a partner. It doesn't matter which. Mia shook her head. It does. If they're working together, then this isn't just about me or you. It's about leverage. Andy's gaze sharpened. Say it. They're using me to get to you, Mia said. And using you to secure something bigger. Andy didn't deny it. Mia exhaled slowly. Then we stopped reacting. Andy's brow lifted slightly. And start. Setting the terms, she said. He watched her for a second longer, then nodded once. Good. The door opened quietly. Andy's assistant stepped in, composed as always, carrying a tablet. He was the same man who managed Andy's schedule and operations, someone who rarely spoke unless necessary. Mr. Yun, he said. The situation is developing. Andy didn't turn. Report. Media pressure is increasing, the assistant said. There's also movement from Mr. Oliver Yun's side. He's calling for an internal review of your recent decisions. Mia frowned slightly. That's fast. He's been waiting, Andy said. The assistant continued. There's more. Mr. Cole has filed a formal complaint. He's claiming misconduct and coercion related to Miss Morgan. Mia let out a short breath. Of course he did. Andy finally turned fully. Prepare a response. Yes, sir, the assistant replied, then paused briefly. And Miss Rain has requested a meeting. Mia recognized the name immediately. Lily Rain, the woman tied to Andy through a political engagement, someone whose presence complicated everything without needing to do much. Andy's expression didn't change. Decline. She insisted it's urgent. Then she can wait. The assistant nodded and stepped back out, closing the door behind him. Silence returned. Mia looked at Andy. She won't stay quiet. I'm not concerned about her, he said. Maybe you should be, Mia replied. If Oliver is moving, then everyone connected to you becomes a piece on the board. Andy studied her for a moment. You're adapting quickly. I don't have a choice. No, he said. You don't. Mia shifted slightly, testing her strength again. It was coming back, slowly but surely. We need to hit them before they stabilize the narrative. Andy's eyes narrowed slightly. How? Expose the connection, she said, between Robert and Oliver. That requires proof. Then we get it. Andy held her gaze. This isn't simple. I know, Mia said. But neither is sitting here and waiting for them to move again. Another pause. Then Andy walked back toward her, stopping close enough that she could see the shift in his expression again, the calculation, the decision forming. You're not stepping back, he said. No, even after what happened tonight. Mia didn't hesitate, especially after. Andy looked at her for a long second, then nodded once. Then we do it properly, he said. Mia's heartbeat steadied. Together. Andy didn't correct her. That was enough. Because this time, she wasn't chasing him. And he wasn't walking away. The plan moved faster than Mia expected, not because it was rushed, but because Andy didn't waste time once he decided. By the next morning, everything was already in motion. His assistant coordinated quietly in the background, pulling records, tracking communications, arranging a private meeting with key shareholders who held influence inside the young group. At the same time, Mia worked on her side, reviewing contracts, financial trails, and anything that connected Robert to something bigger than himself. They weren't reacting anymore. They were setting the stage. "Oliver won't wait," Mia said as she stood across from Andy in his office, a tablet in her hand showing a timeline they had pieced together overnight. "If he's already pushed for an internal review, then he's preparing to move against you directly." "He'll try to isolate me first," Andy replied. "Make it look like I'm unstable, reckless, unfit to lead, which means he needs something decisive," Mia said. "Something that forces a vote." Andy nodded slightly. "And Robert's complaint gives him that opening." Mia set the tablet down. "Then we take it away." Andy looked at her. "How?" "We don't defend against the accusation," she said. "We expose the motive behind it." A brief silence followed. Andy's expression shifted just slightly. "You're suggesting we go public." "I'm suggesting we make it impossible for them to stay hidden," Mia replied. Andy walked past her, stopping near the window for a moment before turning back. "Once we do that, there's no controlled outcome." "I know," Mia said. "But there's also no going back." He studied her face for a second, then gave a single nod. "Then we finish it." Everything after that moved with precision. The meeting was set for that evening. Officially, it was an internal discussion among major shareholders, but in reality, it was a confrontation. Oliver Yun was already there when Mia and Andy arrived, seated at the far end of the table, surrounded by people who had aligned themselves with him long before this moment. He was older, composed, and carried the kind of authority that didn't need to be announced. As Andy's uncle, he held both family ties and corporate power, and he had been waiting for a chance like this. "You're late," Oliver said as they entered. Andy didn't respond. He took his seat without hesitation, Mia standing just behind him, not as support, but as presence. Oliver's gaze shifted to her briefly. "Miss Morgan," he said, "you've caused quite a disruption." Mia met his eyes. "I didn't start it." A faint smile touched Oliver's lips. "No, but you accelerated it." The room settled into silence as the meeting began. One of the senior shareholders spoke first, outlining the concerns, Andy's recent decisions, the public scandal, the complaint filed by Robert Cole. It was structured, controlled, designed to lead to one conclusion. Oliver didn't interrupt. He didn't need to. When the speaker finished, Oliver leaned forward slightly. "This isn't personal," he said. "It's about stability. Leadership requires judgment. And right now, that judgment is being questioned." Andy remained calm. "By you." "By the board," Oliver corrected smoothly. Mia stepped forward then, placing a file on the table. "Then the board should see everything." Oliver's eyes flickered to the file, then back to her. "And what exactly is that?" "Context," Mia replied. Annie didn't stop her. That was all the permission she needed. She opened the file, sliding documents across the table, financial records, communication logs, timelines that connected Robert's actions to a pattern that didn't start with the proposal. It showed coordination, intent, and most importantly, overlap with companies and accounts linked indirectly to Oliver's network. "This isn't random," Mia said. "It's structured. Robert didn't act alone." A murmur moved through the room. Oliver didn't react immediately. He glanced at the documents, then leaned back slightly. "Circumstantial." "Then let's make it direct," Mia said. She turned to Andy. He nodded once. The screen at the end of the room lit up. Andy's assistant had already prepared it. A recording played, audio first, then video. It showed Robert in a private meeting with a representative tied to Oliver's operations. The conversation was clear enough. Money, influence, timing. Mia's name mentioned. Andy's position discussed. Silence fell completely this time. Oliver's expression didn't break, but something in his eyes shifted. Robert wasn't there, but his voice filled the room anyway. When the recording ended, no one spoke for a few seconds. Then one of the shareholders leaned forward. "Is this verified?" "It is," Andy said. Oliver exhaled slowly, folding his hands. Even if that's true, it doesn't prove direct involvement. It proves intent, Mia said. And coordination. And motive, Andy added. Oliver's gaze moved between them. You're making a serious accusation. Andy met his eyes. So were you. The balance shifted. Not dramatically, but enough. Oliver didn't push further. He leaned back, the faintest trace of calculation returning to his expression. Then we'll investigate properly, he said. Internally. No, Mia said. The word cut cleanly through the room. Oliver looked at her. This doesn't stay internal, she continued. Not after what's already been made public. A pause. Then Andy spoke. We release everything. That changed everything. Some of the shareholders shifted uncomfortably. Others looked at Oliver, waiting for his reaction. He didn't give one immediately. Instead, he studied Andy, long and carefully. You're willing to burn the entire structure for this? Oliver asked. I'm willing to remove what's corrupt, Andy replied. Another silence. Then Oliver gave a small nod. Then do it. The meeting ended without a formal conclusion. But the outcome was clear. Within hours, the information went public. Not through rumors or leaks, but through controlled release. Verified records, evidence, statements that couldn't be easily twisted. The narrative shifted again, but this time, it didn't spiral. It settled. Robert disappeared from public view. Oliver didn't, but his position weakened. And for the first time, the pressure wasn't on Mia or Andy. It was on them. Later that night, when everything finally slowed, Mia stood on the rooftop of Andy's building, the city lights stretching out below. The air was cool, steady, nothing like the chaos of the past few days. She didn't hear him approach, but she felt it. Andy stopped beside her, close, but not touching. For a moment, neither of them spoke. It's over, Mia said quietly. For now, Andy replied. She nodded. That's enough. A brief silence settled between them. Then Andy reached into his pocket. Mia turned slightly, watching as he pulled out a small box. He didn't open it immediately. He just held it for a second, as if considering something. You said you were choosing, he said. I did, Mia replied. Andy looked at her. Then choose again. He opened the box. A ring. Not the same kind as before. Not a performance. Not a display. Something simple. Deliberate. Stay with me, he said. Not because you have nowhere else to go. Not because it's easier. But because you want to. Mia looked at him, then at the ring, then back at him again. There was no hesitation this time. I choose you, she said. Andy didn't smile. But his hand didn't shake as he took hers. And this time she didn't let go. And that's where their story truly settles. Not in chaos, not in regret, but in a choice made with clarity. Mia didn't just change her fate. She chose differently, stronger, and with open eyes. Andy didn't chase, didn't force, but stayed, and this time she stayed too. If you enjoyed this story of second chances, love, and quiet strength, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Your support means everything, and there are many more stories waiting to be told. See you in the next one.